Welcome to the Balance Sheet Solutions Training for Board Member Series. Session 1. What is Asset Liability Management? This session will take a look at your role as director of a credit union, define and discuss the importance of asset liability management, examine the concept of rate shocks, and explore some of the risk metrics within the ALM reports. Congratulations on your role as director of a credit union. With this new role comes the responsibility of learning the various risks that the credit union faces on a daily basis. Some of these risks include credit risk, reputation risk, liquidity risk, and cyber risk. Every risk carries its own unique set of challenges in monitoring and protection. The NCUA continually stresses the need for credit union boards to understand these risks and help management manage them, as stated in the following letters to credit unions.
To do their job in a meaningful manner, it is essential that directors understand the risks found in depository institutions, that is, credit, liquidity, interest rate, compliance, strategic, transaction and reputation risk. Moreover, directors must understand the internal control structures at the credit union that limit and control these risks.
Asset liability management focuses on interest rate risk. That is the risk to a credit union's capital and earnings arising from changes in interest rates. ALM reports show the credit union how they are positioned for various rate environments, with an overall goal of preventing a problem before it develops. Depending on how a credit union's balance sheet is positioned, a change in interest rates could result in a change in the value and timing of cash flows, a change in the market value of assets and liabilities, and a change in expected earnings. All of these effects could have a dramatic impact on the credit union's financial position, so it is important to continually monitor this risk. To understand the concept of ALM, let's look at the primary function of a credit union. Liabilities in the form of deposits come into the institution, with assets going out in the form of loans or investments. Like any business, the overall goal for any credit union is for the income from the assets to exceed the expense of the liabilities, resulting in a net profit for the credit union. However, the credit union cannot control the volume of activity at their institution. The various amounts, different maturities, and rates of the many deposits and loan products are not under the control of the credit union. This is purely a function of member demand. It is these unknown variables that pose a risk to the credit union in trying to handle various rate environments. To assess the impact of changes in rates, let's take a look at the most recent interest rate cycle. During the financial crisis of 2007, the Federal Reserve began lowering the key Fed funds target rate from a high of 5.25%. Over the course of 2008, this rate dropped all the way to 0%. For credit unions, this lower rate meant declining profits as their loan and investment rates dropped significantly. However, the existing loans and investments from prior to 2007 now carried a higher market value as their coupons were more valuable in the low rate environment. Unfortunately, as more time passed at lower yields, many of these high yield loans and investments eventually matured off the books, putting more pressure on the credit union margins. Entering a higher rate environment in 2016, the opposite effect is happening for many credit unions. New loans and investments are being put on at higher levels, yet the market value of loans and investments made during the 2009-2015 timeframe have now declined in value due to their low coupons. A credit union must be aware of the combination of income and market value changes driven by moves in interest rates. It is important that the credit union also frequently assess where interest rates are headed. Since interest rates started to move higher in 2016, credit unions need to be prepared for a rising rate environment for the first time in many years. So what will happen to credit unions in a higher rate environment? Again, depending on the existing balance sheet, many credit unions may experience a decrease in the market value of their existing assets. New assets, whether they be loans or investments, will be put on the books at a higher rate, which will help to boost the income of the credit union. On the liability side, credit unions may decide to raise the deposit rate for their members, which would increase expenses, and they may also face an increased cost of borrowing funds if needed. As you can see, the impact of rising rates will have mixed results at the credit union. When assets decrease in value, this has a negative impact on the entire value of the credit union. New assets, such as loans and investments, will be put on the books at higher rates, which will help to boost the credit union's income stream. Share deposit rates may increase, which would raise expenses at the credit union, thereby reducing income. Lastly, the cost of borrowing may rise, which would also decrease income at the credit union. The overall net impact of a change in rates will depend on the mix of assets and liabilities at your credit union. No two credit unions are the same, and therefore, no two credit unions will experience the same impact due to a change in rates. Let's take a look at an example of two credit unions. Credit Union A is comfortable with a large amount of long-term assets, both loans and investments. These longer investments offer higher yields, which helps Credit Union A enjoy a decent amount of income in the current rate environment. Unfortunately, when rates move higher, the assets at the credit union will experience a large drop in market value. Due to the lack of short-term loans or investments, the credit union will have ample liquidity to take advantage of higher rates. And lastly, the credit union may face higher expenses if they are paying out a higher dividend rate to their members. Credit Union B has decided to focus on keeping their assets short, such as auto loans or short-term investments. Since these assets do not pay high yields, the credit union is not seeing high income levels in the current environment. However, when interest rates move higher, Credit Union B will only experience a slight decline in their market value due to the short-term nature of their assets. Their assets will mature frequently enough so that they are able to reinvest in the new higher rate environment. However, they too may also pay a higher rate to their members, but this may be offset by the new higher rates they are earning on their loans and investments. Both Credit Union A and B are great examples of the trade-offs that a credit union faces every day. Credit Union A chose to take on risks through longer-term assets, but their reward was higher income in the low-rate environment. Credit Union B chose to keep their assets short, which limited their income potential in the low-rate environment, but they were well positioned when rates moved higher. So how does a credit union decide where to position themselves to manage interest rate risk? The answer is through asset liability management. This process at the credit union involves determining the right risk levels for each institution and examining how they are positioned for the various interest rate environments. ALM is more than the reports that your credit union runs on a regular basis. ALM is a process that involves structuring your assets and liabilities to generate income within your credit union's risk tolerance levels and member demands. It is a projection of how your credit union is positioned for future risk, and that involves many aspects of the credit union, from strategic planning to liquidity forecasting. The key word is process. The asset liability mix will change on a daily basis at your credit union, so that involves continuous determination of your risk profile and how you are positioned for various rate environments. A top-level overview is not enough to understand the risk of the institution. The ALM report process will dive into detail at your credit union to determine your exposure to various rate environments. In this example, Sample Federal Credit Union has almost 52% of their assets tied up in mortgages. However, what is not reflected are the terms of these mortgages. Are they 30-year or 15-year mortgages? What is their current coupon rates? This is a vital point in understanding the risk profile of the credit union. Another example is their agency exposure is at 8.86%. Is this made up of longer-term agencies, possibly callable agencies? Again, all of these factors play a role in the risk profile of the credit union. The liability side of the balance sheet is fairly straightforward, giving an indication of how your deposits are split between regular shares, money market accounts, and share certificates. How these liabilities are treated in the modeling process plays an important role in ALM report results, as we will learn in a future session. When all of the balance sheet information has been collected, the ALM modeling system will run the data through rate shock tests. These tests are instantaneous parallel rate shock moves of 100 basis points to see the impact to the credit union. The series of tests will look at the unchanged environment as the basis for the analysis and then compare these results to changes both up and down the yield curve. Every line item on the balance sheet is assessed to determine the impact of a rate change over the upcoming 12 months. Management and examiners will want to see how much their risk profile changes with just slight movements in the interest rate environment. If a projected rate change causes the credit union to see one of their key metrics moving by a significant amount, this may indicate that changes to the balance sheet are needed. In reality, a parallel rate move over time is not common. As shown here, comparing yield curves of 2013 and 2017, rates often move in a non-parallel fashion, with the short-term rates rising, yet longer-term rates falling. So why does the ALM modeling process focus on these parallel rate shocks? Remember that ALM reports are used as a tool at your credit union to monitor your risk. By using a uniform standard, such as instantaneous parallel rate shocks, the credit union has the same modeling standard in each report, and all credit unions are placed on a level playing field. Credit unions need a uniform standard way of measuring this risk because their ALM policy must state the acceptable risk parameters for their institution. For risk modeling, these parameters are stated as a limitation on the percentage change within given rate shock scenarios. In this example, the credit union has placed a policy limit of 30% for net interest income. A decline of 30% or more in any rate shock scenario would be considered a policy violation. While the rate shocks represent a hypothetical scenario, the overall goal of ALM is to catch a potential problem before it develops. If a credit union sees a large change to their risk profile with just a small interest rate movement, this may indicate that change to the balance sheet are needed. Risks to the credit union may vary depending on the expectations for interest rates. In this example, the credit union is projected to have a serious decline to net income if interest rates fall by 200 basis points. While this is not in violation of their policy, as stated in the guidance column, it does show the credit union having a significant change to their income. The credit union has to assess whether 200 basis points decline in rates is likely. If they believe this could happen, they may want to restructure their balance sheet to take advantage of the falling rate environment. Whenever an ALM metric is found to be in violation of the credit union's policy, it is important to bring this to the board's attention for discussion. Even if the interest rate scenario is unlikely to occur, it is important that the board be aware of the reported results. Remember, as a board member, you have the ultimate responsibility for the health of the credit union, and you need to be aware of the various risks that the institution faces. Always be sure to discuss the policy violation and document any decision that has been made. Remember that ALM is a process that should be under continuous review. From annual policy reviews where risk tolerance is discussed, regular risk monitoring through rate shock analysis, report creation, and regular board training, a credit union that places an importance on ALM should feel comfortable that they have taken the right steps to manage risk at their institution. An effective ALM program at your credit union will serve many purposes, including the overall goal of serving your members. While this may seem like an overwhelming task, establishing a solid ALM process will help guide any credit union through this analysis on a frequent basis. ALM is a broad tool that is used to help manage one aspect of risk at your credit union. This session took a look at the overall concept of interest rate risk and how ALM is used to monitor and examine that risk. Our next session, we will dive deeper into ALM, looking at some key income metrics for the credit union.